Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Speed. I'm the Council's City Project Manager for the Ravenscraig Access Infrastructure Project for North Lanarkshire Council as part of the City Deal programme. The overarching aim of the project is to provide the strategic transport infrastructure which is required to continue and release development at the site of the former steelworks in Motherwell. Our outline business case was approved by the City Deal Cabinet in October 2020 and has now formed part of the Council's 5-year funding programme for the next 5 years, and we're providing £127 million required. The project itself comprises 3 main elements, the first of which is the creation of a new connection from Ravenscraig to Motherwell, which I'll speak about a little later. The second being the dualling of the A723 north from Ravenscraig to the M8, and lastly, completing the dualling of Airballs Road. The first of these is the creation of the new connection from Ravenscraig to Motherwell. This £21 million project will provide a new 1.3 kilometre dual carriageway with active travel provision on both sides of the road from the regional sports centre at the centre of the Ravenscraig site through to Motherwell. It will also include for a new connection to a future local road within the Ravenscraig site itself, and also creation of an expansion of the existing sustainable urban drainage system at the Ravenscraig site. As the road approaches the West Coast Main Line from the east, it passes through a new structure to be gated by a Network Rail prior to the commencement of these works. As it then passes through the existing industrial area at Auckland Street, there's a new left-in, left-out junction to be created, and lastly the road finishes at a new signalised roundabout at Wilmer Hill Street and Airballs Road. The project itself is part of an existing planning permission in principle for the overarching master plan site at Ravenscraig, which was consented in 2020. And we've since submitted our detailed planning application for this scheme in April this year, and more details of which can be found on the Council's planning website using the reference number on the screen. We are currently developing our procurement strategy for this part of the project. We'll continue to develop our approach over the summer and the autumn of this year, including the publication of a prior information notice in early autumn. This will be followed by the main contract notice early next year and a contract award in early 2023. Our considerations at the moment are related to the work packages, whether the enabling works on the site, including groundworks and decontamination, warrant separation from a main works contract, whether a single contract would suffice. The scope of the contract itself in respect of engineers versus contractors design and the form of contract. We'll typically use NEC, engineering and construction contract, however, are looking at a number of others. We're also considering the approach to pricing and risk sharing between the council and its contractor. We will follow a restricted or restricted style procedure for this and are investigating options for early contractor involvement, and also to decide the level of dialogue that we expect to have during the procurement process itself. If you have any further questions on the project, then please do not hesitate to contact me directly using the details on the screen or to visit the Council's project website. Thank you. Hi everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm Jonathan Speed. I'm a Senior Project Manager for the Ravenscraig Access Infrastructure Project, and I'm joined today by Dorothy Balfour. I'm a Category Manager for North Lanarkshire Council. Dorothy.
Hi there. Yes, as John said, I'm the Category Manager for North Lanarkshire Council, and I manage all the City Deal projects for North Lanarkshire, along with the community benefits as part of that as well, and the monitoring of that also. I also chair the Glasgow City Region Support Group, where we have the strategy to implement and the action plan to deal with, as well as providing guidance and support across the 8 member authorities. So there's a few questions in there, Jonathan. Do you want me just to read out the first one here? Yeah, there's a lot of works in existing areas. Who will be responsible for traffic management?
So we've already developed some draft phasing plans, particularly for the works around the Motherwell town centre part and the Wilmer Hill Street junction. It will be critical of that part of the project to actually maintain traffic flow across what is already a very busy junction. I think we've had earlier experiences in North Lanarkshire of not handling some town centre schemes so well, and the impact on residents and businesses being quite severe. So it is a critical part of it. It's our intent at the moment that whilst we have our phasing plans, we will include those as part of the specification for tender, but the responsibility for implementing that will be part of the main contract. So it will be the contractor looking at that on our behalf.
Okay. Who's building the bridge for Network? Excuse me there, that just jumped too fast for me. Who's building the bridge for Network Rail and when will this be built?
So the first part of works as part of this project itself is actually the construction of the railway line crossing, which was indicated on the plans. And Network Rail should start construction of that around next spring. So we're planning at the moment for an April-May start in 2022 for completion during spring of 2023. The main works will be done predominantly offline around a 9-month period of pre-construction, where they build the bridge away from the railway itself inside the Ravenscraig site, and then during a planned track closure in spring of 2023, they'll push the railway line into place. At the moment, that scheme was designed by BAM Nuttall, who are Network Rail's term contractor for this current 5-year capital programme for Network Rail for this part of the UK. And the first port of call really for that contractor will be BAM Nuttall, subject to a tested value for money. If we don't believe collectively with Network Rail that it's value for money, we will then look at other framework contractors that Network Rail have across other regions, but they essentially have a single contractor framework for each of their regions of the UK.
Okay, there's a question come in here, Jonathan, about community benefits. So I'll take that one. And it was they've just heard from Susan Aitken regarding new community benefits strategy. As I indicated at the start, I've been heavily involved in that strategy. It's a sustainable procurement strategy, which includes the community benefits also. In terms of, will it differ from standard community benefits menu? Speaking from a North Lanarkshire perspective, we and a lot of our projects use the same menu as the city region do. It is very much about skills and employment, training, recruitment, community engagement. All of these things are everything that, you know, in general, I would say are part of everybody's community benefit strategy across the board. They may differ slightly in how they put points to it, and how many points they ask for, and probably what their targets are for each of their projects. So that's where they'll slightly differ. But I would say in the main, you know, everything's covered within the menus, and we do actually have all of that information available on our webpage, and you can go across to the city region stand where you'll be able to access that information. Where will the contracts be advertised? I'll take that one, Jonathan. The contracts, it's the usual places. It's PCST, PCS is the platforms that we will obviously use. Obviously now that we are out of EU, we'll use Find a Tender service when we're advertising any of our projects. Okay, there's another one here. Is this part of the Pan-LAN orbital? Do you want to take that one, yes, Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. So the Pan-Lanarkshire Orbital Transport Corridor in total itself comprises 3 main projects, one of which obviously is the Ravenscraig Access Infrastructure Project. Additionally, north of that is new road infrastructure comprising the East Edu Link Road, which is little early in its development at the moment. They're in, I think, in a stage 2 process of looking at options for the final road alignment, so they're not in the detailed design stage, but that is due to follow, and I think was included in your pipeline presentation earlier on today, Dorothy. And then additionally, on top of that, there's works around the Motherwell train station itself, where we are working alongside Abellio and ScotRail to reshape the forecourt as part of station improvements. So all in, it's quite a large project, but they are discrete projects in respect of contract delivery and planning.
There's a question here on
questions on each other. We can come on to that a bit later. I think if there's time at the end, we can pick up on those.
Yep. Question. Scotland Infrastructure Consultancy offers fully compliant access to appoint design consultants. Have been Arcadius, Fairhurst and Swaco have been appointed to deliver the infrastructure framework in Scotland with a requirement to deliver 30% BSMEs. We would be pleased to discuss routes for procuring professional services on the contract. I suppose from our perspective, yeah, on you go, Jonathan. Yep.
So in terms of the Ravenscraig Access Infrastructure Project that's been on the screen today, we procured consultants from the Scotland Excel engineering and technical consultancy framework back in 2019 for this project to be kicked off sort of in late 19, early 20. And we have now submitted for detailed planning about 6 weeks ago, and so we're not at the point of this project where we do require consultants at this time. I think as other parts of the wider Pan-LAN, particularly around East Erdry, a future procurement exercise will take place a little later this summer around looking at design and the next stages of that contract. And the intent at the moment, as I understand it, Dorothy, is to look at the Excel framework again, which has recently been renewed, I think earlier this year.
Yeah, that's what we've indicated. But obviously, we do complete we'd call it a sourcing methodology, a strategy, or options appraisal, is whatever terminology you class that as. So we can address SCAPE as well. We are signed up to use the SCAPE framework, so it's not something that we're happy to look into it and look at that for each individual project that we do. So it's not off the table. See what question there. Anything else we've got here?
I'm just looking at the one from Scott McDonald around housing.
Okay.
In terms of the access infrastructure project itself, it is the transport infrastructure, so it is road and active travel works. The wider Ravenscraig master plan site, of which more details can be seen on the council's planning portal. I think it's reference 18/00463 if you want to find that planning consent. I think in overall terms, the overall site has around 2,500 new homes still to be developed, so there's still a fair amount of housing to go. That land is sold directly by Ravenscraig Limited for development, rather by the council, with we pick up some of the public and some of the social infrastructure works rather than the housing directly. But certainly if you want to get in contact afterwards, we can kind of give the details, either to see the master plan itself or to speak to Ravenscraig Limited on that. I know the sites are being developed by a range of house builders.
So there's a question here about SMEs and obviously how they we are an SME company from Lanarkshire who provide client project management services specialising in managing utility diversions. We have managing we have managing utility packages on some of the largest and highest profile projects in the UK over the past 15 years. Are there any opportunities for SMEs in managing utility designs, diversionary works?
So at the moment, our design works around utility diversions have obviously formed part of our planning application, which has been led by Amy, working in close collaboration with Swaco. At the moment, we haven't intended to go out further, but certainly once we get into the main contract and the main contractor is appointed during the part of next year, there will be that further work to be done. It will be for the main contractors to look at their initial sub-consultants and also subcontractors when they initially tender, but then there are then likely to be further contractors appointed underneath the main contractor, which Dorothy, I think I may have touched on in early presentations around the requirement to advertise a smaller subcontracts and subconsultant packages from the main contractors themselves.
Yeah, that's correct. Obviously, there is a caveat to that. If main contractors do have their own supplier lists, then they are entitled to do that and use those supplier lists. But we do encourage that they have to advertise any subcontracting packages on PCS. That is part of the strategy. I don't think there's many more questions, Jonathan. I don't know if there's any that I have missed that you can see from there.
Just scrolling down. The timelines for procurement, I think, is the very bottom one. I think, as we said in the presentation, essentially our intent this year is really to start really a dialogue with potential suppliers, really from today onwards, to inform a PIN notice to be published in the autumn of this year, just to firm up our procurement strategy, and then with the intent to put a contract notice out in early 2022 to award the main contract in 2023. But there's a fair amount still to be worked out in terms of the procurement strategy itself. We put a few points in the presentation, so we are keen to hear either issues, concerns, or ideas that people have now, and they can obviously contact us outside of this session. Our details are available, but also when we put the PIN notice out in the autumn, again, just to get some more formal ideas around that. But as I say, the broad timing is that we'll put a contract notice out in early 2022 to award in early 2023, which will follow the completion of the works by Network Rail.
I think that's the questions for now, Jonathan. Do we want to go into any more detail about any of the other specific projects?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth, if you want to touch on just some of the earlier part of the Ravenscraig, the two later phases. Hopefully people will have seen from the very short whistle-stop tour presentation that the Ravenscraig Access Infrastructure Project comprises three main phases, the first of which really has been the subject of today, which is the new connection from Ravenscraig to Motherwell. The second is the dualling of the existing A723 road from the top of Ravenscraig to the M8 access at Hollytown. And lastly, the dualling of Airballs Road, which is at the western end of Airballs Road as it approaches Hamilton Road. the timing of the dualling of A723, I think, Dorothy, you've got information in the contract pipeline on that, but essentially the next steps for our part will be, we have an earlier extant planning permission from 2013, which we're doing some further design work now with our internal RES engineering team to finish off that design, but we intend to go out to tender to appoint projects and contract managers for that project. And then following that, it will be then to go out to procure the works contracts themselves. Dorothy's got the timing on those. I don't have them to hand.
Yeah. So that second phase, the Ravenscraig to M8, so that's approximately worth about £38 million, the works part of that, and it will go out to a competitive tender process. And we're looking to start that around November 22, with an anticipated start date in January 24. So, but it's a big contract coming up. So I think I'm going to be very busy, and me and Jonathan will have many meetings coming up. Do we want to then move on to the third element of that, which is
so the last
Airballs
piece
Road?
of this infrastructure is the dualling of Airballs Road itself, which is a relatively small compact project. In total, the value of that it's around £6 million. It sort of is the smallest part of the project overall. We intend to be letting contracts. I'm pretty sure at the moment we're saying late 2023, early 2024 from memory, Dorothy.
Yep, that's what we're saying. And that, again, that will be advertised to a competitive market as well.
Yeah.
And we've got April 23 with a start date April 24 on that one. So there's quite a few projects coming up. If you do want to access the pipeline, I don't know if you've listened to the pipeline presentation I did earlier, but the full list of all the 8-member authorities projects that are coming up are on our webpage. You can access all of them, and also there's all the contact details, which is the thing that you want. It's not mine, it's the project managers that you can get in touch with, and it gives you an idea of the dates of things starting. I'd also say there is some, what we'll go on to in a second, that we are going to use the framework for, that we have talked about, but some of them, for us, the framework's still live. It's a brand new framework, but in terms of other projects, some of these frameworks are expiring over the next few years. So if you're wanting to get onto any of these frameworks, then I would encourage you to make contact with the other stands that are here today, just to find out more detail about how you can apply for it, and when they're renewing them, exactly as we've got on our list here. So
but there's a few other questions, Dorothy, that have come in whilst we were just talking. The first is, will the project be fully designed when it comes out, or will it come out as design and build? At the moment, we're at detailed planning stage, so I guess RIB stage 4, depending on what form you're more used to. At the moment, I guess it's part of what we're designing as the extent of contractors versus engineers design. I think in large part, we would expect for a large part of the works, particularly around the Motherwell end of the work, which is inside the existing urban area, to be pretty fully designed, to be honest, when it comes out to tender. But there may be elements of how one addresses groundworks inside the main Ravenscraig site that we may lead to elements of design. I think from our experience of other recent projects in North Lanarkshire at Ravenscraig Park and others, we have taken a design and build approach, but not leaving a huge amount of design in that, if that makes sense. It's a little bit of a hybrid, I guess, sort of trying to capture some of the expertise of contractors on site, but equally trying to nail down the bits that we really want to make sure that we get as we intended. It is something that we will be reviewing throughout this autumn in our contract strategy, and also ideally looking at methods of how we get early contractor involvement, or at least a bit more contracting sort of, kind of engagement in the specification itself. I think there's a following one around what are the chances of a new company winning a tender in Scotland. This contract, kind of particularly for the main works of the new connection, won't be from a framework. It will be an open tender. I think we're probably looking at a restricted style tender process of a 2-stage with a selection stage and an award stage. I'm assuming new means as in a brand new company in this, rather than one with a long track record. I guess it will be a case of demonstrating the track record and expertise. We do assess all tenders on their merits as received, so we'll sort of, we haven't set the tender criteria yet, or the questions that will form part of the qualitative element. I don't know, Dorothy, if you've got anything to...
Yeah, just looking, there's a few questions about SMEs, and I'm not sure if these people have been on the call, just to remind people that obviously that it is mandatory for contractors, tier 1 contractors, to advertise their subcontracting packages. There's a few on that. I'm just scrolling down. Yeah, what types of subcontract opportunities will there be? So again, that we will award to the main contractor. It will be then for the main contractor to break up those packages and decide how that is divided up. There's one here.
You said the opportunity to work with the council
Yeah.
to evaluate delivery. I think certainly, and obviously, whilst we have a reasonably firm timeframe for completion of the schemes in relation to both the land assembly for when we start the scheme, but also completion in terms of the city deal timing and the funding that's available, and the working relationship with Network Rail. But I think certainly in terms of its programming and how it's delivered, we would absolutely be looking for innovation and ideas from contractors in the tender process, particularly around how the work's delivered. I think a critical part has come out from experience of other projects is there is a fair amount of work to be done within a busy, dense urban environment of Motherwell itself, and there's a lot of challenges in how we deliver it effectively and quickly and cost effectively while still enabling Motherwell to function. So I think we'd absolutely be looking, kind of for work in that as part of the tender process, but we'd be very keen to engage with contractors both pre and post tender on how we best do the work. It's not going to be a project without its challenges or its difficulties in physical delivery, I don't doubt.
Okay, there's a question here about accounts and how many years that we ask for. So so we do evaluate that as part of our process and the project and the value and the turnover and the market that's out there. And so that it is project specific. We don't necessarily have to ask for 3 years accounts. So they will be assessed on a project by project basis. So it's not a definite that that's what we do. As part of the PIN notice, we may ask some questions about turnover so that we can gauge the right market and that we're not ruling anyone out. But obviously it still has to be in line with the project size and scope and complexity also. So we do assess that as part of our appraisal process. And I think there was one about smaller works packages. Sorry, Jonathan, have you got one there?
Well, there's a question around pilot projects for new businesses in Glasgow and the point of contact for that. I'm not entirely sure I'm clear on the question, but I mean, by all means, if you'd like to email us directly afterwards, you can either have a chat by email or over the phone to make sure we understand the question.
Yeah, or if it's project specific for Glasgow, there is a Glasgow stand and there also is people on the City Region stand from Glasgow. If you want to post your question over there, they might give you a better indication, but you can go to any one of those stands and get some more detail from there. Okay. The question that I had saw was, I've lost it. We're inundated with questions here. It was about other frameworks, sorry, it was about smaller works packages. So Glasgow City Council have a construction and trades framework that can cater for this. But again, it will be assessed on every basis. It tends to be if it's under a certain value, we follow our own North Lanarkshire Council standing orders. But again, it will be assessed. But obviously, if there is a framework that's suitable and it's got the right market and right suppliers on it, then we would look at using that also. I hope that answers the question.
There's a question on fair work practices and community benefits.
Okay. If community benefits and fair work practices are not scored, how does the buyer bring that information into the bid process? So we tend to have mandatory community benefits as part of that. So we will assess the need with, again, it's the project size and complexity, the term of it, and we will assess what we think the requirements are for that project. Fair work practices, if we're using a framework, it's already been assessed as part of the framework. So I've had that pre-assessment. But as I say, the community benefits, we would sit and say, if it's a small value project, we're not going to ask, and it's a short term of say 6 months, we're not going to ask for major, apprenticeships and stuff like that. So we do, it is, again, I think I keep saying project specific, but it is very much we assess it on a project by project basis and what types of community benefits, but we would say that would be mandatory, but at the same time, we would assess what's right for the project and not just what we think we want.
We do often though score methodologies as to how they will be delivered in terms of community benefits, and we also often have the opportunity for bidders to offer additional voluntary community benefits on top, which is a scored part of many of the tenders. I think in a couple of recent tenders we haven't scored it, but that's where it has been part of the framework assessment. But I think certainly for new tenders we have generally scored this part of the tender.
Yep. Okay, I don't know if we answered this one. Is that we're a third sector organisation who has been added to several framework agreements. We're working with the individual clients. With the same rotational or rank system come into play, or is it a more flexible approach based on individual client need? So I'm not sure what framework it is that you are referring to. If I had to say, the ones that we in the main use is the engineering and technical consultancy. There is a selection procedure if you want to go down the direct award. Again, we would need to assess whether that's the right thing for us, and we have to justify that as part of our sourcing methodology in terms of the right route and the right route of the framework. We have to assess the scores, we assess the commercial, we assess the technical scores. So there's a whole number of areas that we assess. Let's see if there's, yeah. So it comes back to the project.
I think it's fair to say that for a lot of the ones where we've done the technical consultancy frameworks, we have done mini tenders or mini competitions in most of those cases. We've done the odd call off sort of where it's been specific with project experience on that site, and we've made the justification for those. But in general terms, we've tended to run mini competitions in each time. I don't think I'm familiar with the rotational system, but certainly I don't think that's on the Excel.
That's not. We would tend to the highest rank, but again, there's a whole options appraisal that we have to follow for that and justify that route, and it tends to be only for smaller value ones that we would probably do the direct award. We, in the main, as Jonathan said, we would do a mini competition for that.
Yeah, I've just been asked, I think, a couple of times for my email address, which was obviously on the presentation. It is in the profile, but I put it in the chat box a couple of times, so hopefully they'll be able to pick up that from there.
Yeah, and the presentations will all be available through the Supplier Development Programme. I think if all you need to do is fill in the feedback form, and then you'll be able to access the presentations from today, and obviously all the contact details that are in there. It's the same for the pipeline document that I mentioned earlier that covers all City Deal projects. You get all the contact details in there for each individual project, and a little bit of description if you've not already downloaded that. You can also access that from our City Region website too. Let's see if there's any more. So we've just over 2 minutes left, so fire your questions in quickly. You will be cut off. Just having a wee quick look through to see if there's anything else.
So far, there's nothing else. Is it worth just touching on the timing of the East Airdrie project, Dorothy, as part of the wider Pan Lanarkshire Orbital? So there's, I think, the first part of that is the next stage of the design commission for, I think it's part C, which is sort of to go from the preferred option stage into detailed design and planning, and that's due out.
It's due out, yeah. We're looking to start the procurement process of that this year, to then get the tenders out. It is an intention to use the Scotland Excel framework, but again, we'll go through a full options appraisal and if that's the correct route and the best route, depending on what our final scope is. That is roughly worth about £5 million, and the anticipated start date is probably going to be into the early part of 2022 for that one, and that will run from
You broke up slightly there.
I'll just run through that again. Yeah.
So there's a couple of questions that have left in the chat box, Dorothy. Sorry.
Okay, let's have a look.
Point of contact for green energy and building projects. I don't know offhand. I think we'll need to sort of come back. I think you can drop us a line at my email address, and I'll have your contact sort of by reverse, and we can revert back. I'll need to check. I think with other colleagues, either in the growth team or other.
I'm not sure of that one either.
Yeah.
Is there
And then just
anything
lastly,
else?
will the presentation be available? They just want around the presentation being available, which I think you said if they sign up.
Yes, if they sign up, if you fill in the feedback form, you'll be able to access it. So yeah, that's us finished. So thanks very much for listening. And obviously you can contact us direct if you've any further questions.
That's great. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.